All right, so just to state for the record, today is April 21st, 2021, and my name is Ben Bauman, and I'm here in Indianapolis, Indiana, and I'm speaking via phone with Dennis Neary, who is in Carmel, Indiana, and we are doing an interview for the Indiana Legislative Oral History Initiative. So, just starting off, when and where were you born?
I was born in LaPorte, Indiana on February 11th, 1944.
Okay. And what were your parents' names?
My dad was Chuck, or Charles, and my mom's name was Loretta.
Now, where was your family from before Indiana?
My dad was from Ottawa, Illinois. He was born in Ottawa, Illinois, and my mother was born in the United States. Her parents came over from Germany. Her last name was Vollrath.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay, wow. So, did you have some interesting interactions with your grandparents? Did they come to visit at all, or?
Well, actually, when I was born, they were rather elderly. I remember my grandpa a little bit, but not really.
Sure.
A real lot. Grandma lived many years longer than Grandpa, and she was a big, hearty German, very strict, very type lady.
Wow, okay. And what were your parents' occupations?
My dad was a machinist for Bendix Corporation, and my mom was a full-time mother.
All right. Did you have any siblings?
I have siblings. I have 14 of them.
Wow, 14. Okay, that's quite a few. Jeez.
Yeah, I'm number 9 in the lineup.
So, okay, what? Oh my gosh. Okay, what was that like growing up around that house?
It was pretty chaotic. When you got that many people in one household, there were lots of good times and bad times. You just learned to live with, a lot of patience. My dad was pretty strict. My mom was not quite as strict, so we always went to mom if we really wanted something. It was just interesting times in the 50s growing up. It's a lot different than it is today, but one of the stories I always tell is that, when I went to college, it's the first time I slept in a bed by myself.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
I always slept with at least one brother, sometimes two.
Wow. So how big was your house growing up?
It was just a very little three-bedroom upstairs, and then we used the living room as bedroom later when my dad got pretty sick. So.
Okay. Wow.
And we had a basement, and one of the brothers stayed down there. Of course, we had the old coal bin. We didn't have a water. You had to shovel the coal in to keep the fire going, to keep the house warm.
Oh my gosh. Now, did you...
The worst thing is we only had one bathroom upstairs, and that was the only place that heat would get up. There's the only vent upstairs. So everybody would, in the morning, rush to go to get into the bathroom because that gets little heat anyway.
Wow.
It all worked out. The girls were the hardest ones. There were 10 girls and 5 boys, so, of course they didn't do as much makeup and all the stuff they do today.
Right. So did all 15 children live at the house at one time?
No. My oldest brother, Chuck, had been gone.
Okay.
And 3 of my sisters went to the convent, so after 8th grade they left home and went to Mishawaka, the convent in Mishawaka, Franciscan Sisters of St. Francis.
Wow.
They were called the Sisters of the Poor, but they lived in a Studebaker mansion. I could never figure that out.
Oh my gosh. Well, I'm sure that was quite the childhood. How would you describe it overall?
Overall, it was, you don't know any better, but it was good times. We all, we didn't expect a lot, and we all, when we got old enough to work, I had a paper out when I was in 4th grade. We all chipped in, and, helped out. So seemed like my mom was, having a baby every 2 years. There was like a 30-year span there.
Yeah.
And I always say my dad was in the hospital so much they thought he was a doctor, but
Wow. Okay, that's really interesting. Okay, that might be a record in terms of people I've talked to for a number of siblings. That's quite a few.
Yeah.
What understanding, if any, did you have about your family's political beliefs as a young child?
My dad was he belonged to the Union. He was a Union steward, so he was a Democrat. But my aunts, my dad's sisters, were all Republicans. And so it got very, on Sunday they would come over, because plus we had Grandma living with us too. I forgot to.
Oh, wow.
So when they'd come over to see Grandma, well, then they always got into political debates, from time to time. So that was always interesting to listen to their perspective of the country and how it should be run. So they were not big FDR fans.
Oh, okay. So do you remember those political debates pretty well then?
Fairly well, yeah.
Interesting.
And then, there's like two sides to every story, and it depends on your viewpoint of it.
Right. And what schools did you attend as a child and teenager?
I went to St. Joseph's School. We all did. Of course, we walked to school. There was no buses. It was about a mile and a half walk every day. With my brother made us walk in single file lines, and he'd be in the back. If we didn't go fast enough, he'd step on our heels.
Oh my gosh.
So we all went there to elementary school through 8th grade.
Okay.
And then I went to LaPorte High School. The high school is right across the street from the grade school.
Oh, okay, sure.
It's a public high school.
Yeah. How would you describe your educational experiences at those schools?
I think they were, St. Joe prepared me a lot more advanced than the high school did, and for, in math and algebra and things like that, in English. So that was the one difference. But as far as experience, we didn't have any physical education, basically. That was recess time. So that was new, and workshop and things like that. So the publics had more variety to expand to.
Right. Did you have any favorite subjects in school?
History was one of my favorites, yeah.
Okay. Did you take part in any extracurricular activities?
I went out for football. My freshman year, I was 99 pounds. I was
Wow.
the lightest foot on the team.
Yeah.
And I was the fourth-string quarterback. Well, by the end of the season, the other three got hurt, so I was a quarterback for the last couple of games.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy.
So by attrition, I moved up the ranks.
How did you do as the quarterback?
Not well.
Not well.
It was just, we played teams that were, more out of our division. Out of our league. I remember there was a guy from Elkhart that was playing safety at the time. So he was a big fullback. He ended up being one of the All-Americans, but he probably weighed like 240 or something like that. So he comes running through there. I'm the last guy in the safety. So I grab onto him about the 30-yard line. He drags me all the way into the end zone.
Oh my gosh.
I held on, but
yeah, didn't help. Yeah. Wow.
But baseball was my true love, so I made the baseball team, and that was before we had baseball championships. But we won our when I was a junior, we won the league we were in, whatever with all the high schools. We won that, and we had a guy on there named Ron Reed, who went on and played basketball and baseball at Notre Dame, and then he went on to the majors and played for the White Sox,
Wow.
the Phillies. He played about 15, 16 years in the majors.
That's cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what position did you play in baseball?
I played center field. I was batted second because I was fast.
Yeah.
I led the team in stolen bases both years.
Wow.
Of
Okay.
course, then we only played 20 games.
Yeah. Still. Yeah.
These days, a little different.
That's cool.
And then during the summer, I played in the summer league. My dad had a baseball team called the LaPorte Sportsmen, and of course, I started as a bat boy and ball chaser. You know, you had to go chase the foul ball.
Right.
You didn't have that many new balls, so that's how I really grew up in a baseball family. And my dad was the coach at St. Joe for football, basketball, and baseball. So we would, like when my dad got home from work at 4:30, about 4:30, the boys always ate on the first shift. We ate in shifts.
Okay.
And the boys ate the first shift, so then we'd go with Dad to whatever we were doing that time of the year, football or baseball or basketball. So that was one good thing, because then we didn't have to wash any dishes.
Right. Yeah, that's really wild. Yeah, eating shifts. That's crazy. Yeah. Did you ever go with your dad or something to any professional baseball games, on like a road trip or anything?
Yeah, we used to go up. He got vacation around the 4th of July every year for 2 weeks, and so we'd go up to Cubs. I was a big Giants fan, and so was my dad.
Yeah.
My mom was a big Cubs fan.
Okay.
So we'd always go up and catch a game and go to a nice restaurant in Chicago, and then go up to Racine, Wisconsin. We had relatives up there.
Yeah.
And we stayed with them. But I didn't go every year because we had to take turns of going when it was our year or not. So.
Right. Yeah, that's fun. Okay.
Yeah.
What were your views of the state of Indiana or about being a Hoosier as a child?
Well, I really didn't know a lot more because we didn't do a lot of traveling. We didn't go outside the state too much. I delivered the paper, but I didn't read it that much.
Yeah.
So I was more interested in history stuff and sports. I'm probably more interested in sports than I was a lot of other things. But it seemed to be, a good state. There was my dad always felt that the workers were not represented enough in the state, and it was more of a business community. So our business environment, especially in the little town of LaPorte.
And where did you end up going to college?
It's funny, there was a guy that played on my dad's team who was the coach at Murray State down in Kentucky. So he gave me a sort of a little ride, pays for your books and part of your tuition.
Oh.
I went down to Kentucky to play baseball. Well, when I got down there, the coach had signed up with Central Michigan, so there was a whole different coach down there. So
Wow.
I really did play once down at Murray State. And then I ended up working at the Dairy Queen, making more money and having more free time. Because baseball was a fall sport, then you were indoor working, and in the spring, and it was a full-time sport, which I wasn't used to. So.
Yeah. Okay. Sure. And what did you study at Murray State?
History and political science.
Oh, okay. Cool. And so after Murray State, where did you go?
I went up to back home to LaPorte, and there was a teaching. I graduated in January, and so there was a teaching job for a lady that was on pregnancy leave. So I taught at a high school called Boone Grove. It's a little school up in Valparaiso area. So that was my first teaching job. It was interesting because the you were hired by the township trustee, so you had to go to see the township trustee.
Wow. Okay.
To get your job, and then I did that for just 4 months, half a year. Then I got a full-time teaching job in Michigan City in a little school called Long Beach.
Interesting.
I've never heard of it.
No, I haven't. And so after you got your degree in history and political science, so did you just want to become like a history teacher? Is that it, or?
Yeah, that's what I wanted to do, but there weren't any openings. It was
right
for that. So they had this opening for elementary teachers. So and I went on and got my master's in education while I was teaching. So, and of course, in those days it was a requirement.
Oh, okay.
So you didn't have a choice.
Right.
You had to go and get it within so many years. So, but Long Beach is a whole other story. We'll talk about that if we can.
Yeah. So, okay. So where'd you get your master's?
IU.
IU, okay. Okay. And so what was, how did you like your college experiences at Murray State and at IU?
Murray State was different. I mean, there was, number one, it was the Deep South. I can remember going downtown. They still had the wooden sidewalks, and you go downtown and person different color would be walking toward you, and they'd step out into the street. I mean,
wow.
This was, in the 60s, but still it was
right.
strange.
Yeah.
And then I did hitchhike down to one of my classmates, and we hitchhiked, believe it or not, from Kentucky down to Florida for spring break.
Oh my gosh.
And that's when I really saw, the separation of colored water fountains, bathrooms, restaurants. It was just, this was in the 60s, so
yeah.
it was still alive then.
Yeah.
It opened my eyes a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose that must have been pretty shocking to see. But yeah, I guess.
Separate.
Yeah, wow. So, I guess with that in mind, and just your college experiences in general, did you start to sort of develop political opinions more in college?
I don't know if it was more. It was, Kennedy got elected in '60. I was still in high school. I mean, so I'd been following politics. But my dad was in the '50s was a city councilman in the city of LaPorte. So I worked on some of his campaigns, going door to door, and we go to the churches and put stuff on there while people are at church in the parking lots on their windshield. We did all those kinds of things.
Right.
Stood at the polls on election day, so the old-fashioned politics.
Yeah. Okay.
And he took me to I heard Adlai Stevenson speak, and different speakers.
Right. Okay. So now, thinking back to your working career, so the first school you worked at was Long Beach?
Yes. Well, that was really my second, but I spent 23 years at Long Beach.
Okay.
That's really.
Okay, and so how did you enjoy your experiences there?
I loved it. It was a great community. It's right. Of course, it's right on the lake, but there's a great history. Al Capone and all the mafia guys had homes there in Long Beach, and they had tunnels connected. So in case one got raided, they could take a tunnel up to somebody else's house. I mean, it has a really unique history. And then when the steel mills came in, a lot of the executives bought homes there. It's sort of like a Carmel. It's an expensive place to live. Luckily, I was able to find a small house to live there and raise, start my family.
Yeah. Wow, it does sound pretty interesting. So
we had a lot of good students too, because their parents were concerned about,
right.
their education.
Yeah. So was it on was right on the lake or something then, or?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Right in the lakefront. It's just east of Michigan City.
Oh, okay. Sure.
And if you go up a little farther, and you're on the Michigan line, right? One side you're on Indiana, next on the lakefront you're on Michigan. And Mayor Daley from Chicago has a home up there. The old mayor, well, the whole Daley family has a home up there too.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
So when did you get married?
I got married in Michigan City at Queen of All Saints Church.
Okay. And what year was that?
That was 1969.
Okay. And do you have any children?
I have 5 through 2 marriages, and 3 with the first marriage and 2 with the second.
Okay, got it. And how influential was your family on your career?
What?
Influential were they to your career?
Well, they're very influential. They helped, mold me as one that listens more than talks, because I had never had a chance with all those women around.
Okay.
I learned to be a good listener. And then during the campaigns, they all helped out when I was running. I will say, just going back a step, in 1968, I was a campaign coordinator for Robert Kennedy up in the port.
Oh, wow.
I did a little parade. I got a picture with him and Ethel, and we were riding through downtown LaPorte, and Robert Kennedy had a book called To Seek a Newer World, and I was supposed to get him to sign it, but he was busy talking to people and waving things. So Ethel said, "Here, I'll sign it." So she signed it. It was fun sharing the back seat with you. Love, Ethel.
That's funny.
Yeah. So anyway, and then in '69 I got married, and 2 boys and a girl with my first wife.
Okay. So how did you become more seriously involved in politics?
Well, the state senator that was representing us, who was Republican, wasn't doing what I thought enough for education, and so that's how is that what you're asking, that, or how did I first get involved, or?
Yeah. So how did you get your career rolling there in politics, and how? Yeah.
Well, I belonged to the Young Democrats, and then I helped people on campaigns. Birch Pye, John Bradimus, who was a congressman up there. I'd help on their campaigns and organize, people to go door to door for them. And we did one year. We did a registration of. Back in those days, you had to go to the courthouse. You couldn't get a list. You couldn't just buy a list. You had to go to the courthouse, and then you check and see how they voted. If they voted, straight Democrat, 9 times in a row or 10 times, and you put their name down because you thought they were going to vote. They voted every year, and they were Democrats, and put his name down and their address, and then we had to take all those names and go back and cross-reference them to a book that the attorneys had with the address and the phone number. So then we could call them, and we knew, it was a long process, but I got a lot of high school kids to do it, and the congressman would always pay for the pizza dinner afterwards, so
okay.
It all worked out.
Yeah. That's neat.
Yeah. So that's when I really got started doing that, organizing and doing different things.
Yeah, okay. And so when did you decide that you wanted to run for the General Assembly?
Well, probably in 1975.
Okay.
I started thinking about it and looking into it and talking to different people and see what kind of support was out there. if it was doable. And it was funny because we had one senator for the district, but we had two representatives for the same district. That's how old that.
Yeah.
I go back to the way I do it. Not single districts, but they had two-member districts. Some had more than that. So those were Democrats, and I knew I couldn't beat either one of them in a primary. So I put my hat in the ring in '76 and ran against a Democrat who had been the last time there was a Democrat state senator. He was an insurance guy and getting a lot of money to the party and all that. So I had to run against him in the primary, and that was probably my closest race. I beat him by like 400 votes because there's not a lot of voters in the primary.
Sure.
And once I won that, then I went on to the general election, and that was the Carter years, and so the Democrats did well.
Yeah, okay. And as you initially became involved in politics, did you have any key issues or legislation that you wanted to work on?
Well, education was always, I didn't think there was enough funding for schools, and I didn't think they paid attention to the needs of the teachers and some of the students. They just lumped them all together and said, this is what you get. So,
okay.
And then we have a little railroad up there called the South Shore. I don't know if you know about that or not.
Not much, yeah.
Okay, it's a little commuter railroad. It goes from South Bend to downtown Chicago.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
And, before I even went down, after I got elected, the day I went down to Indianapolis in 1977, there was an ICC hearing in Michigan City because the railroad was going bankrupt. And so I said I was going to go and try to set up a district and find some funding for it. And I did. So.
Wow. Okay, that's cool.
Of course, we were the majority in the Senate back then. I know it's hard to believe.
Yeah, that's right. Things have changed quite a bit since then. Yeah.
Yes.
So did you have a particular campaign strategy when you were running for the General Assembly?
Yeah, I figured Michigan City is basically Democratic, so you have to come out of Michigan City by at least 2,000 votes ahead of the Republican.
Yeah.
The county is basically Republican, so you can't lose that by more than 2,000 votes. So that offsets each other. So the key is LaPorte. So and I'm from LaPorte, so I had a good base there. So that was my strategy, and it paid off. So.
Yeah. Okay. Do you remember what your first election day was like?
Nervous.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember we didn't know we were going to win or not, so we didn't have a big party planned or anything.
Yeah.
The first time, 32 years old.
Yeah.
You never know. So we just got a little get together at the Holiday Inn with a bunch of the workers. So and I won by 1,700 votes. So I really didn't have any real. I mean, I was excited and all that, but it was a matter of I didn't. You never know if you're going to win or not.
Yeah.
That's the way it was. So.
Yeah.
But then 4 years later, I ran against the same guy because he thought he lost on a fluke. And I beat him on a fluke the first time. Well, this time, the second time, I beat him by 3,400.
Okay.
And that was the year Reagan ran for president in 1980. And, Reagan swept the county and everything else. In fact, I won and another judge won. We were the only two Democrats on the whole ballot to win in 1980. Wow. And the funny thing was I had a big plan, a party plan from the second time. Nobody showed up because...
No one thought you were going to win?
The judge and I were the only two that won.
Yeah. Oh, my gosh.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
That was sort of funny.
Yeah, wow. So how did your feelings change with each re-election that you had?
Just stronger and stronger. I felt that, but I worked at. You always run as if you're behind. If you don't have that feeling in your belly, then you're going to lose.
Right.
You got to just do everything that you did in previous campaigns, maybe a little more than others. It's easier to raise money when you're incumbent than it is when you're just first. That was the other thing. The first time I ran a shoestring budget because nobody wanted to even take a chance. Even the teachers union I had to convince them to support me because they were afraid that if I lost, that this guy was the head of the labor committee and a lot of the education stuff went through the labor committee, and they were afraid to go against him. But in the end, they did support me.
Yeah. Okay. And so, thinking about the first time that you were ever elected, what was it like to walk into the State House your first day as an elected official?
It was, it was just amazing. It's such a beautiful building, and such, people were nice to me, and it was just a whole sense of being, something important is going to happen here. I'm right in the middle of what's going on.
Right.
You're in the middle of the whole state issues, and whatever you do affects everybody in the state. And it's a big challenge and a big task.
What were your expectations for the legislative process?
They were a lot different than
yeah.
I wanted it to be. Yeah, they're not like you read in the book.
Yeah, okay. A little bit more complicated?
A lot more complicated.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's a process, and once you learn it and how it all works, it really makes a lot of sense. But at the time, when you're trying to get something done, it's frustrating.
So how did you learn the ins and outs of state politics?
Basically, just being on committees and watching how other people worked and how they were able to get their points across in comparison to others, and how prepared they were. I mean, it's one thing, and they tell you in the caucus that you better know the answer to the question that you ask, because if you don't, you're going to be in trouble. So if you get up on the Senate floor and you ask a question and you don't know the answer to it, and the guy you're questioning, he gives you an answer, you don't know if it's right or wrong. So,
right.
You have to know, you have to be prepared on what you're talking about.
Did you have any political mentors once you settled into the Indiana General Assembly?
Yeah, I sort of, Frank O'Bannon was sort of a mentor of mine, and a guy named Tom Teague, who was a young senator. He sort of guided me through a lot of stuff. So.
Yeah, okay.
It was funny, there was 4 of us that were in our 30s that were elected that first year, so we sort of had the same ideas about, how things are working and how they're not working, and sort of stuck together that way.
Right. So how did you keep track of the needs and wants of your constituents?
That was always a difficult problem in that basically we sent out surveys. I didn't send out very many my first couple of years because I didn't have a big mailing list like everybody else did. So I'd sent those out. But if somebody would write me a handwritten letter, I would definitely read that.
Yeah.
And respond to it. There was 2 big issues that the first year was the Equal Rights Amendment. Probably never heard of that, right?
No, I've heard of it. Yeah, I've talked to a few people about it that I've interviewed before.
Yeah, it was we were the last state to ratify it, but it still hasn't been ratified by 36 states. So it was very contentious. It was very, very. So I would get hundreds of letters on it, one way or the other. But most of them were all just, you see, they just filled in their name,
Oh, okay.
their senator, and then it was, the same letter from all these different groups. They'd have a meeting and they'd just pass them out and everybody would send them. So
Right.
I didn't pay much attention to them. I just took a count, how many was for, how many against, but didn't really respond to them. But if somebody had a handwritten letter to me, that I would take time to respond to. But there weren't that many at first. So.
Right. So how involved were you in the Equal Rights Amendment?
Well, I was pretty involved, and actually equal rights people came up and campaigned for me on weekends from Indianapolis.
Oh, wow.
Different places.
Yeah.
So that was one of the. There weren't a lot of difference between the incumbent and myself when I first ran. He was against the Equal Rights Amendment, and he was against the lottery, and I was for both of them. And that was about the only two issues we differed on. Everything else we were very similar on. So.
Yeah, okay. So, for people that may listen to this that are not too familiar with the Equal Rights Amendment, can you explain what the situation was at the time and what the two different sides, what their opinions were and why they thought that way?
Well, it was just to give equality to women. Basically, what I don't have the language in front of me, but
right.
It was based on equality for women, and it felt the Constitution didn't clarify it enough. And this was an amendment to the Constitution, which had to be ratified by 36 states, and we were one of them. Now, those opposed to it said, well, if you do that, then you're going to have, women will be able to go, you just have one bathroom, everybody will go to the same bathroom, and
right.
There were just small little stuff about how women would take over, and now they have the rights, and men won't have the same rights that they had before. So
yeah, okay.
But it says equal rights. So, but their argument was weak, but they had enough people, conservatives, states and conservatives to believe that.
Okay, so from your understanding, it was just basically the other side just didn't want to have equal rights for women.
Right.
Yeah. Now I've remember reading in like newspapers and stuff about this how some Republicans were saying like we don't think this is necessary because women already have equal rights and stuff. Did you hear that argument a lot?
Yes. Yeah. There is. See, I'm not a constitutional lawyer. I'm not even a lawyer.
Right.
There is something in the Constitution, and that's what they were saying. They were relying on that this is not needed because they already have it. I think it's the 13th Amendment, but I just can't remember right now.
Yeah. And so how did you and your colleagues from the Democratic Party refute those type of statements?
Well, we're saying that it doesn't totally include women. This would clarify further. It's more of a clarification.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really, really interesting time period with all that going on. And I guess this was a pretty intense debate.
Yes, it was. And we had a couple of Republicans that voted for it, and some Democrats voted against it. I remember one of the senators had to get a call from Jimmy Carter to switch his vote to vote for the amendment.
Oh, wow. Okay. Jeez. That's really wild.
Yeah, yep. And then one you had to have a police car because his life was threatened. So you had to have, one of the senators had to have a...
Gosh.
Yeah. It was tense.
Yeah. So thinking more about your career in the General Assembly, do you remember the first bill that you sponsored?
Oh, I sponsored?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can remember the first bill. The first bill I had, it was brought to me by the Department of Natural Resources. And basically it said that a hunter had to get permission to hunt on a land, from the landowner to hunt on his property.
Okay.
Okay? Pretty simple, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I go to the committee hearing, thinking, well, the DNR is going to testify for it, all this. Well, the place was packed. The committee room was packed.
Oh my God.
Those committee rooms are small anyway. But
Yeah.
It was packed. So I get up and I testify for it, and they said, this just makes comments that you should ask the landowner before you
Right.
would go on his property and hunt.
Yeah.
Well, then the fox hunters of southern Indiana got out. We have these fox hunts, and we go all over, and we're not going to try to get permission from every landowner to hunt these fox. We do it twice a year, and we think this bill is not needed. So the committee chairman, DNR, testified that they thought it was needed, that there maybe are some exceptions when you're doing fox hunting or whatever, sport that you're doing. So,
Right.
The chairman just tabled the bill. But see, a lot of times things that you think make sense.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I guess that's one of those things I've always kind of heard is that specific legislation for very localized problems get a lot of attention because these people that are living in these communities, that stuff they pay attention to more than some of the bigger things that they don't necessarily are connected with much. But little local issues, some people can really latch on to, I guess.
Yeah. And to me, it was a statewide issue, but anyway, it didn't go anywhere, so I don't think it's been tried since.
Yeah, that's pretty wild though. I would almost kind of think that it could be kind of dangerous to let people hunt on your property, but yeah, I guess that's
the culture down there, so
yeah,
they go ahead and do it.
Yeah. So yeah, different things happening different places, I guess. Yeah.
Right.
So how was the regular interaction? What was it like between the different members of the General Assembly, formal and informal?
Back then it was a lot more relaxed than it has been in recent years. We worked together on a lot of issues. Senator Miller, Dick Miller, was a caucus chairman, and I was a caucus chairman. And he'd come over and he said, I need 3 votes, and on a particular bill, whatever it was. And so I'd work it out so he could get his 3 votes to get it passed. It would be something that was not real controversial, but something that probably should be done. So
yeah.
So in those days we talked to each other. We just you got a problem here. We socialized a lot more. The Democrats all stayed at athletic clubs. The Republicans all at the Columbia Club. So after the session, we go there and have dinner there, or we go out to dinner, and then of course back then in the early days, Indianapolis shut down at 6 o'clock. I mean, there was very few things open.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
We did a lot of that together. A lot more than I think is done today.
Okay. What were the differences between the House and Senate?
The Senate was more strict on rules and things. I remember talking about my first day. I walked in the Senate and going to session. So I go into where I'm going to be sitting. I take my coat off and put it in the back of the chair like I always did when I was teaching. I know I do that every day. Well, the Secretary of the Senate came over and said, "Senator, you have to keep your coat on in the Senate chambers. I said, oh, okay.
Get scolded for that. Yeah. That's funny.
Anyway, the House is just more relaxed. They're slower on things. I mean, they got twice as many numbers. You know, they got 100 compared to 50.
Yeah.
So it's and they tend to be more dramatic on a lot of things, and the Senate tends to be more policy oriented and talk issues more than the Senate, the House does.
Yeah. Okay. And in terms of the process for generating a bill, did it seem pretty complicated, or did you feel like think the process was pretty straightforward, or?
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward. When I was there, LSA, Legislative Service Agency, wrote the bills for you.
Yeah.
So,
right.
And they still do it today. And so you would give them an idea of the concept, and then they do all the background checks and see if there was already if it was in the law or wasn't in the law. But so they were the big help in make sure the language was correct in all aspects.
Yeah.
As far as the language. Now, when it came to amendments, we had to do our own amendments. LSA didn't do amendments in those days, so we had lawyers on our staff that would write the amendments. So that's where it got. Still, most of the legislators were lawyers, so it really would take a lawyer to put it in the right context and the right area of the law. So
yeah. Okay.
You give them the idea of what you wanted in the bill or amendment, and then they would use the correct language.
Right. And how did you garner support for your legislation?
Well, basically, before I would bring a bill down, of course, in those days, you got to call your own bill down in the Senate. So before I called down, if I thought it was real controversial and maybe had a hard time getting through committee, I'd do a head count. I'd go around and see how many votes I had, and then I'd go to caucus and say, this is how many I have. I haven't talked to you. Can you support this or not? And then try to get a head count there. The thing is, a couple times I had legislators say they were going to vote for it, and then they got on the floor and voted against it.
Wow.
That's always the most upsetting thing to happen to you, because you're counting on them. You get a head count, boom, it backfires on you, and then it looks like you didn't know what you were doing. Well, I thought I knew what I was doing. Just some other people changed their mind at the last minute.
Yes, I mean that's fascinating. So how hard was it to keep track of who you could count on to vote for your legislation or not?
Yeah, well, it depends on what the issue was. Education, anybody that was in education, you could go to them usually. Because if they weren't in the education committee, they're still educators, but they're on other committees. So committees are going on all the time, so you have to get them when they're not in committee. And it might be after session, late at night, or early in the morning.
Yeah.
Because the days are filled. Once you get started, I always like to come in early in the morning, and that's when I got things done, or late at night, because people start interrupting you, and then you got committee hearings, or you're on the floor, so you can't get a lot done then.
Yeah. Sure, that makes sense. How was legislative business conducted outside of formal votes and committee meetings?
How was it conducted?
Yeah. Was like
informally.
Yeah, informally, how was it conducted? Like, did you have a lot of talking with people in the hallways about trying to get support for legislation, or going out to dinner with people, or?
Yeah, it was usually somebody had an issue, we'd end up going out to dinner.
Okay.
Or, having a cup of coffee, or, someplace away from the Capitol so you could actually talk.
Yeah. Yeah. Was it hard to talk around the Capitol because of reporters like hovering around, or?
No, but there was always lobbyists, and you walk out, you go out, and they say, "Oh, so and so's talking to so and so," So then they start rumors about what's going on and what's not going on. So a lot of times it's better off just to meet outside the State House.
Yeah. Okay.
The reporters were in the early days. They were in the chamber, which is unusual, but they weren't. We lots of times went across to the press club, and we'd sit and have dinner and drinks with them at the press club. I mean,
yeah,
it was more informal in those days.
Sure. Okay. Now, how influential was party leadership when it comes to what legislation would get pushed forward or not?
Oh, I think it's real influential because the President Pro Tem controlled what bills would go to committee.
Okay. So, were there ever occasions at all when people kind of bucked party leadership on something, or would they all pretty much follow in line?
Well, there were times they bucked leadership, but depends on the issue. But mainly, in the caucus, we never had a caucus bind. I mean, as caucus chairman when I was there and before me and probably after me, is that you say, I don't care how you vote, just remember the people that sent you here. Can you go back to your district and explain how you voted yes or no?
Right.
If you can do that, that's all I'm asking you. Because every district is different.
Yep.
People are different in the state, from north to south. So we never had a bind on things, but just saying, I would appreciate your vote, but if people in your district are opposed to this, that's fine.
Right. So, okay. Yeah, it sounds like a logical way of going about it.
Logic doesn't work too much in this.
Yeah, I suppose politics makes that a little bit more complicated sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah.
How often did you have to work with the Republican Party to get legislation done?
Well, first 2 years, no, because I was in the majority.
Okay. Right.
The next 14, it was always, I remember I had a bill about the mayor got killed in LaPorte. It was somebody broke in his house and shot him.
Oh my
Anyways,
gosh.
Republican, the House had a bill, I had a bill very similar, and so, of course, the Republican bill passed.
Yeah.
The language was the same, but which is fine. The important thing that it passed.
Yeah.
I never had a pride of authorship. Some guys do. It's nice, but
right.
And the other thing, well, in those days, I think they changed it, but in the Senate, you had to be present to vote. So your voting record, you might have been in committee or you might have been in the hall, missed the vote. Well, then you never. There was very few people ever had 100% voting in the Senate. In the House, the neighbor could vote for you. So if you were gone,
what?
sat next to you, he'd vote for you.
That's super weird.
What?
That sounds super strange.
Yeah, but that was the way it was.
Wait.
So they always had a 100% voting record because the neighbor voted for them.
So okay. How was seating arranged? You're sitting next to I guess someone from your own party though most of the time.
Yeah. Right,
okay.
Right.
So not gonna have like someone from the other party vote. Vote for you.
And they're divided down the aisle.
Yeah.
The Democrats on one side,
Yeah.
Republicans on the other. So, but now there's so few Democrats, they have to mix them in together. But
yeah. Wow. How were the interactions like between Democrats and Republicans when you served?
I think they were pretty normal. I mean, we would argue things, but we weren't enemies.
Yeah.
We just thought our point of view was important to be, as a minority most of the time, is that, we wanted to make sure what the bill actually did and how it really affects everybody. A lot of times they would just, good bill should pass. Well, wait, time out. So anyway, we get along fairly well.
Now, since you started serving in the 70s, when you got into the 90s, did you notice any change at all, or were things still functioning pretty much the same in terms of how people got along from the different parties?
I think they were starting to get more hostile towards each other in the 90s. In the 80s, it was, we went, when I was elected, there were 27 27 Democrats and 23 Republicans. And then by 1981, there were 35 Republicans and 15 Democrats. So, we lost 12 seats in that period of time, from 77 to 81. Okay. That's when Reagan got elected, and there were a lot of other circumstances. But they drew the maps. But then by 1990, we came up to 26-24. So we were only one vote short of being a tie. And Frank O'Bannon, with Lieutenant Governor, was a Democrat, so he would break the ties. But it's not impossible for the set of Democrats, but we did. When we got down to 15, Frank O'Bannon and Louis Maher and myself, we would go out after session, and we go to small towns and talk, small counties where there were Republicans, and talk to the Democratic holder, like it might be the county sheriff, the clerk treasurer, or whatever, that was a Democrat, and it was Republican county, then we knew that they had people voted for them more than they looked at their party affiliation. So we started recruiting those kind of people, and we went from 15 to 24, just one short of getting that 25th one. So it's a matter of recruiting, and you got to go and, it's a Republican state, but there are still some good Democrats that are elected in these counties, and they can be recruited.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. Okay. Now, when you served in the Indiana General Assembly, from your experience, what does the public not know about the Indiana General Assembly and how it operates?
I think probably the conference committee is what they don't know, or how it operates.
Okay.
That, and even legislators don't know about, or lobbyists and legislators don't know about committees.
Right.
Because it's a public hearing, but somebody will offer amendments in committee, but only the committee members get to see it like an hour ahead of time.
Yeah.
It's not a good system, and it should be published way before that.
Yeah.
At least a day ahead of time. That these are the amendments that are offered, and we may hear them, we may not. But here are the amendments, so everybody has a chance to read them before they get into the committee. And I just think that, as you're going to have open committee hearings, make them all open. Don't make part of it open. And then conference committees, that's always been a secret.
Yeah, it's definitely, I'm sure, hard to digest a bill in a short period of time and then vote on it, whether it should go through.
Yeah.
What were the most controversial legislative issues during your time in the General Assembly? You already mentioned Equal Rights Amendment. Were there any others? Laetrile.
It's a cancer drug that you could get in Mexico, but you couldn't get in the United States.
Okay.
It was just like the Equal Rights Amendment. We got thousands of letters. In fact, the committee was so big they had to hold a committee hearing over in the stadium, the old stadium.
Oh my gosh.
So that, and there was one about, what was the other one? Soap suds. I mean, it's not soap suds. It's something in the soap. Phosphates in the soap.
Okay.
It was real. It didn't go anywhere either, but it was very controversial.
Wow. So how did those even come about? Or is that?
Well, you get a constituent, and you get a group of people together. I mean,
Yeah.
especially if it's a cancer pill that cures cancer and supposedly cures cancer
Yeah.
in Mexico. You're going to say, hey, we really got to take a look at this.
Right.
Phosphates, I don't remember exactly
Okay.
all the details on it. It sort of just died its natural death.
Did you have any involvement in the debates regarding those pieces of legislation, or were they just kind of things that were going on during your time?
Yeah, no, I stayed away from it as far as I could.
Okay. Fair enough.
Number one, I didn't believe that there was a drug in Mexico that can cure cancer.
Right.
I mean, hopeful, but I was, I didn't see any studies on it.
Right.
I had some studies, but I didn't trust them. Anyway.
Yeah. Things like that usually probably are too good to be true. Yeah.
Right.
What piece of legislation did you work on that took the most time?
The South Shore Bill.
Okay.
Creating the Northern Indiana Community Transportation District.
Oh, okay.
It covers 4 counties: St. Joe County, LaPorte County, Porter County, and Lake County. And Lake County wanted to always control everything, as they still like to. And sometimes they do because they have the biggest population. But in order for this railroad to function, you can't have a great big board. So I proposed one member from each district would be a county commissioner, one of the county commissioners from all 4 counties, and one from the governor's office. So that you got an uneven number. You got 5 people. So it takes 3 to pass anything. So that's how I set it up, and it's still surviving today, and it's thriving today. I mean, today they get millions of riders, and before they were going to be bankrupt.
Yeah. Okay. What was your proudest moment as a legislator?
Proudest moment. I think being sworn in, have my mom there.
Yeah. Okay. Sure. And what about the biggest challenge you had to overcome during your time in office?
Biggest challenge is probably balancing my constituents back home when I go home on the weekend. We always had third house sessions. We'd have 2, one in LaPorte, one in Michigan City. So that takes all set. We went Monday through Friday in those days. We didn't get off on Thursdays.
Yeah.
And so that Saturday was taken up mainly by going to these third house sessions, and then you got Sunday and Monday you're right back down here. So it's a lot on the family. That's hard to balance that. Other than that, I guess working the whole time while I'm down here. I did have a sub for my students, but it's still it was hard to come back because we get done in May, so I leave in January and come back in May, and so that was tough sometimes.
Yeah. Okay, sure. What, in your opinion, is the most important work of the Indiana General Assembly?
Most important work is probably the budget and education. I think that's in my opinion, the 2 most important things. I'm not real happy with the voucher system because I think it's hurting public education statewide.
Okay.
But the budget is the key. All the other things are, we can live with them or without them.
Right.
But you got to have that budget to make the state function.
Yeah, sure. So one of the things I read about in the newspaper, I'm not sure if you remember about this, but I read that you had worked on some legislation at some point in time to help, I guess, fight for literacy programs in the state. Do you remember anything about that?
Yeah, I remember something about it. I don't think it went anywhere, unfortunately.
Okay. Just curious, because I thought it was kind of an interesting thing. Not something I would have thought about much before, so that's why I was curious. Okay. What about in the 1980s? I saw that you had worked on some sort of animal fighting legislation and animal cruelty legislation. Do you remember that?
Yep.
So can you tell me a little bit more about how that developed and?
Yeah, well, there was a cockfighting going on in my district on the weekends.
Wow.
And then there was also the dogs involved also, but the cockfighting was a big thing. And so police had raided them several times, but they still weren't able to, they just move it to next week, or they still had them. So I tried to introduce the legislation to make it illegal and put some teeth in the law.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, it didn't go anywhere.
Wow. Okay.
But I brought the issue up, and I think that's what made people aware that that is going on.
Yeah. Do you think that's still a problem in the state to have stuff like that, or?
Oh yeah.
Wow. Okay. Let's see. When did you leave the Indiana General Assembly? Was 1992 your last session?
Yes.
Okay. And what made you leave?
Well, I've been there. I was up for re-election. I've gone through 4 election cycles. My wife wanted to move back to California, and so I thought, well, it's time to move on. And we just couldn't get over that 26, 24. Because then they redistricted again, and then, everything went downhill after that, even worse. So I decided it's time to go ahead and retire.
Yeah, okay. How would you summarize your time as a state legislator?
I enjoyed it. It was a job that has a lot of responsibility, but I enjoy helping people out and trying to solve their problems and make Indiana a better state.
Yeah, sure. Do you have any funny or favorite stories from your time as legislator?
I don't know if it's legislative, but it's one of my favorite stories.
Sure.
In 1987, IU was in the Final Four down in Louisiana, New Orleans, and so I was lucky enough to fly down with the governor and Frank O'Bannon and a couple other people to go to the games on Saturday. And IU played UNLV, and a friend of mine from one of my constituents went to Syracuse, and he had got a hold of a couple extra tickets, so I met him down there, gave him the tickets, and then the rest of them went out for lunch at a nice French restaurant, but I stayed at the stadium, and I got a hot dog. Well, I had a red sweater on. Well, unfortunately, I got mustard all over the front of the sweater.
Oh, boy.
So I look like a mess, but anyway, IU wins against UNLV, but it was closer than the score ended up, but
yeah.
UNLV, they go down towards the end of the game and they back up, get behind the 3-point line and sink it.
Oh my gosh.
They were just unbelievable. They didn't go for the 2-pointer.
Wow.
Well, anyway, IU wins. So we're driving back to the airport in a state police car, and the governor's in the front seat, and O'Bannon and Mayor and I in the back seat. And so Frank says, "No, you ask him." And then Louis says to me, no, Neary, you ask him. So the governor, he overhears the conversation. He said, is there a possibility you can stop and get some beer? Because there's no beer at the college games.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
So state trooper says, oh, we make these executive privilege stops all the time. So he pulls into a little 7-Eleven, you know. There's like 4 state police cars pulled in there. They probably, well, I was a raid or what. So we go and get a case of beer. We go out, we fly home. They don't like to have alcohol on the plane because if he crashes, then there's all kinds of questions.
Right.
We didn't, so. Anyway, we go back on Monday. Of course, the Senate's in session, right? Not the House. The House stayed down in New Orleans all weekend.
Right.
So we fly back down and go to the game, and then at the end of the game, Smart hits the shot, and IU beat Syracuse for the national championship. So we're all happy. So this time we're going back to the airport. We're all in different cars. So I get to the airport, and Governor Orr looks at me and says, Neary, where's the beer? I said, well, Governor, I don't know. So he looks at the state trooper and says, take him where he needs to go. So
oh my gosh.
go to the state police car, go out the airport to another 7-Eleven, get a case of beer, and get back on the plane. So,
wow.
But it was sort of a fun story.
Yeah, sounds like you guys were having a good time. Yeah.
Yeah, because IU won.
Yeah, that's right. Well, yeah, it would be a bad time if IU did not win. That's true. That'd be a different story. Yeah. Did you have any regrets as a legislator?
Regrets?
Yeah.
The study committees were sort of a waste of time. I wish they had more impact. I mean, you get these experts coming in and testifying during the summer, and nothing really comes out of them. These times I were there was nice discussions, but you're getting all these people together and not really following through on anything. So either make them so you do something or just do away with them.
Right. What advice would you give to future legislators or current legislators?
Do your homework. Try to keep up on all legislation and remember who sent you.
Right. Last few questions here. How has the state of Indiana changed over the course of your lifetime?
I think it's gone from very conservative, then it went to more middle of the road, now it's back to very conservative again.
Okay. And how has the Indiana General Assembly changed?
Quite a bit. They only work 3 days a week.
Okay.
We were there for 5, so the schedule has changed quite a bit. The speaker doesn't have the power he used to have because the speaker used to call down the bills. In the Senate, same thing. The senator used to call down his own bill. Now the lieutenant governor does, or the president pro tem. So that's a big change on how your bill's controlled or not controlled.
Yeah. Okay. Now, you were the Senate Minority Leader for a little while, right?
Right, 4 years.
And how did you get into that role, and what was that like?
Well, when Frank got elected lieutenant governor, then there was a void there, so there was the caucus then votes for the new leader, and there was 3 of us going for it, myself, May Hearn, and Bob Hellman at the time. And as Louis and I had the same number of votes, but not enough to win, so we compromised together, and I became the leader, he became the assistant leader, and then Hellman was, he didn't want to be caucus chairman. Jimmy Lewis wanted to be caucus chairman, so that's how we sort of did a compromise within the caucus.
Okay. Sure. What, if any, enduring qualities do Hoosiers still have or hold dear?
Well, I think that most of them are honest, upstanding citizens, and work for the good of the state. I mean, I think most of them are proud to be called Hoosiers, and we want to have a safe and growing economy and safety at home.
Yeah, okay. Last one. What do you want Hoosiers to know about their role in relation to the function of the Indiana General Assembly?
I think they need to know that their voice does count, and legislators will listen to them. They won't always agree with them, but they will listen to them. And the more that the legislators hear from their constituents, the more they will react on an issue that they think or that the person thinks is important.
Yeah. All right. Sounds good. So is there anything that we did not talk about that you wanted to mention at all, or?
I also was after California, I was appointed by Governor O'Bannon to be the head of the Education Employment Relations Board.
Oh, okay.
And that was, so I've seen all sides. I've seen the legislative side, the executive side, and I'm retired now, but I did lobbying, so I've been out in the hallway too.
Yeah, okay. And as someone that has served as a lobbyist then and a legislator, I guess, what would you say is a healthy role for a lobbyist in government? I know that there's always can be some controversy about lobbying and how much should be allowed and shouldn't be allowed, or.
Yeah, well, since we're a part-time legislature, lobbying has a big influence in the Indiana General Assembly. If we're full-time, year-round, it'd be different, but I lobby for the nursing home industry.
Oh, okay.
Most people don't even understand how the nursing homes operate, where they get their money.
Yeah.
The Medicare, Medicaid formula. It's a very complex business, and because of that, you have to inform or educate legislators how it all functions. I would say there's probably only out of 150, there's probably only 5 people in the legislature that really knows how the business of nursing homes.
Right.
And in this instance, it's a matter of education. But
yeah.
The other thing is, you better be honest, because if you lie to a legislator, you're done.
Right. Yeah. Sure.
So, good or bad, I tell them one way or the other what it is, but you tell both sides. But if you don't, then you're going to be in trouble.
Yeah, no, that definitely makes sense. Anything else that comes to mind?
Excuse me, I got a call.
Oh, no worries, no worries. Any other things that come to mind that you want to mention before we stop the interview?
I think we're pretty well done.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for taking part in this project. I'll probably have your interview up within the next few weeks or so. And
okay.
I did receive your paperwork, so thank you for sending that. And yeah, so thanks again for doing this. I appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, Ben.
All right. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.